Watch closely. Moments like these are rarely accidental. Every pause, every inflection, every strategically chosen word matters. This isn't just a viral clip. It's a masterclass in handling interruptions, asserting authority, and demonstrating leadership under scrutiny. Observe how preparation and composure can change the outcome in real time. And think about what lessons you can apply in your own high-pressure conversations. The segment began like any other. A live political discussion where ideas were meant to be exchanged, debated, and dissected. Jesse Watters, known for his rapid-fire questioning and interruptive style, had one goal in mind: to dominate the conversation. From the outset, it was clear that he intended to cut off Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett at every opportunity, attempting to steer the dialogue toward sound bites and headlines rather than substantive discussion. Yet Crockett's demeanor was calm, her posture confident, her focus unwavering. The tension in the studio was palpable. From the first interruption, Crockett maintained her composure. Each attempt by Watters to derail her point was met with precise pauses, slight adjustments in tone, and carefully chosen words. The room seemed to hold its breath as viewers could sense the battle for control, unfolding not just of the microphone, but of the narrative itself. Crockett understood that influence in this moment came not from speaking over an opponent, but from commanding attention through clarity and confidence. By the third interruption, the dynamic had shifted subtly but unmistakably. While Watters tried to create chaos, Crockett's methodical delivery began to assert authority. She used each interruption as an opportunity to refine her points, ensuring that every response carried more weight than the last. Her timing, her diction, and the deliberate pacing of her sentences made it increasingly difficult for Watters to redirect the conversation. The interruptions intended to destabilize her were instead highlighting her poise and strategic thinking. The live audience, both in the studio and online, immediately recognized the contrast. Whereas Watters relied on aggression and volume, Crockett relied on substance and rhythm. Analysts would later note that her approach exemplified the power of disciplined rhetoric under pressure. She had transformed what could have been a frustrating and chaotic exchange into a demonstration of controlled leadership, proving that calm precision often outweighs forceful interruption. Each successive interruption became a masterclass in strategic patience. Crockett did not respond with anger or defensiveness. Instead, she allowed Watters to expose the weaknesses in his own technique. By letting each attempt to dominate the conversation fall flat, she emphasized the depth and clarity of her own arguments. Viewers were drawn in, not by spectacle, but by the skillful construction of her responses. By the seventh and eighth interruptions, the momentum had fully shifted. Watters' style of rapid interjections began to lose its impact as Crockett's composure and logic became the focal point. Even casual viewers could sense the growing imbalance, a seasoned media figure relying on theatrics, and a congresswoman using measured precision to control the dialogue. The subtle cues, the pauses, the raised eyebrow, the shift in emphasis were all signals that Crockett had seized narrative authority. And then came the ninth interruption. Watters, perhaps sensing his diminishing influence, attempted to escalate the confrontation. He increased the pace, doubled down on his interruptions, and tried to corner Crockett into a reactive stance. But Crockett remained unshaken. She acknowledged his interjection without concession, setting the stage for a decisive, final response. Her demeanor signaled that the moment for escalation had passed now. It was time for resolution. And the room could feel it. Finally, her 10th sentence arrived. Unlike the prior responses, this one was designed not just to clarify, but to assert control definitively. With measured emphasis, she encapsulated her argument in a way that left no room for interruption or deflection. The audience could sense the shift instantly. The live cameras caught the subtle expressions on Watters' face: surprise, hesitation, and eventual acknowledgement that the exchange had changed fundamentally. Crockett's calm authority had dismantled the pattern of interruption, leaving the media host momentarily speechless. Social media erupted immediately. Clips of the 10th sentence went viral. Comments flooded in praising Crockett's ability to maintain composure under sustained pressure. Analysts highlighted her use of rhetorical timing, strategic phrasing, and the psychological impact of patience as key factors in her success. The segment, intended to favor the aggressor, had transformed into a case study in disciplined, strategic communication. Viewers recognized the significance. This was not just a media confrontation. It was a lesson in leadership, resilience, and narrative control. Crockett had demonstrated that interruptions, no matter how persistent, cannot overcome clarity, preparation, and confidence. Every detail, from her micro-expressions to her cadence, reinforced the idea that true influence stems from mastery over oneself, not dominance over others. As the segment progressed, the tension between Jasmine Crockett and Jesse Watters escalated, but the dynamic had clearly shifted. While Watters attempted to regain control through rapid-fire interruptions and pointed questions, Crockett's strategic patience had already established her as the dominant voice. Each attempt to derail her only highlighted her composure and command over the conversation, reinforcing to viewers that clarity and preparation outweigh aggression in high-pressure exchanges. The live broadcast captured every subtlety, the slight raise of an eyebrow, the pause before a response, the deliberate choice of words, all demonstrating Crockett's mastery of timing and rhetoric. Analysts later emphasized that these micro-expressions played a crucial role in controlling the narrative. By projecting confidence and measured authority, she subtly communicated to the audience that the interruptions were ineffective and, ultimately, irrelevant to the strength of her argument. Midway through the segment, the conversation turned toward policy specifics. Watters tried to pivot quickly, injecting controversial topics with the intent of eliciting reactive answers. Yet Crockett remained poised, addressing each point with evidence-backed reasoning and structured arguments. She methodically referenced statistics, legislative records, and prior public statements, weaving them seamlessly into her narrative. Every reference strengthened her credibility while exposing the exponentiality of the interruptions. The 9th interruption, which had initially seemed like the breaking point, now appeared almost comical in contrast to Crockett's calm precision. Watters attempted to cut her off mid-sentence, but Crockett's measured pauses allowed her to reclaim control effortlessly. Observers noted that she had effectively transformed each interruption into a rhetorical advantage, giving her the opportunity to emphasize key points and reinforce the integrity of her statements. The segment had shifted from a potential media spectacle into a showcase of disciplined repute, communication. Public reaction to the broadcast was immediate and intense. Clips of Crockett's responses circulated across social media platforms, garnering millions of views in hours. Hashtags praising her composure, clarity, and strategic communication began trending. Viewers from across the political spectrum expressed admiration for her ability to navigate interruptions without resorting to frustration or confrontation. The segment became a case study in the effectiveness of patience, preparation, and rhetorical discipline under pressure. Meanwhile, political commentators dissected her technique. They highlighted the deliberate structure of her sentences, the strategic use of pauses, and the timing of her emphasis on critical points. Each of these elements had contributed to the decisive impact of her 10th sentence, the one that ultimately shut down the repeated interruptions. Analysts argued that this was a textbook example of controlling a narrative in real time, demonstrating that influence comes not from volume or aggression, but from clarity, credibility, and precision. Throughout the segment, Crockett's ability to maintain focus and authority also underscored a larger lesson about media dynamics. In environments designed to favor rapid reactions and sensationalism, The disciplined use of evidence, strategic phrasing, and calm delivery can decisively shift the balance. By refusing to be drawn into reactive exchanges, Crockett illustrated that control is achieved not by outshouting an opponent, but by outthinking them, crafting a narrative that withstands disruption and resonates with viewers. As the final moments of the live segment approached, it was clear that the story had transformed. What had begun as a clash between a media host and a congresswoman had evolved into a demonstration of effective leadership under pressure. Crockett's 10th sentence, delivered with precision and authority, had left Waters momentarily speechless and the audience fully attentive. The power of her communication extended beyond the immediate segment, influencing social media discussions, news analysis, and public perceptions of media accountability in the aftermath. The conversation continued online and offline. Citizens, educators, and political analysts debated the implications, often returning to the lessons of patience, preparation, and strategic response. Crockett's performance became an example of how public figures can manage high-pressure, live situations without sacrificing integrity. Each interruption she overcame reinforced a broader principle. True influence stems from clarity, credibility, and ethical consistency, not from dominating the microphone or forcing reactions. By the end of this exchange, the narrative had solidified. Jasmine Crockett had not only maintained her composure, but had leveraged the interruptions to assert control over the conversation. Waters' repeated attempts to disrupt were rendered ineffective, and Crockett's methodical approach provided a powerful lesson in communication strategy, leadership under scrutiny, and the enduring impact of measured, evidence-based argumentation. The tension in the studio was electric. Each interruption Jesse Waters attempted had only amplified the anticipation, both in the room and among viewers watching live. Every gaze, every subtle gesture, every micro-expression became part of a narrative that extended far beyond the immediate exchange. Crockett's strategy was clear. Let the interruptions reveal the weaknesses in her opponent's approach while building her own authority incrementally. And all eyes were now fixated on what would come next. As the segment progressed toward the pivotal moment, Crockett's delivery grew increasingly precise. Her sentences were carefully structured, not just to convey information, but to shape perception. Every pause was intentional, every inflection measured to emphasize the weight of her words. The interruptions, meant to disrupt her, became the stage for her commanding presence. Observers noticed that with each attempt to cut her off, her audience's attention only deepened. The repeated interruptions created a rhythm, a tension that Crockett expertly navigated, turning pressure into a platform for clarity. Jesse Waters, increasingly frustrated, tried to escalate. His rapid questions were designed to provoke a reactive response to force Crockett into a defensive stance. But she did not flinch. Instead, she treated each interruption as a cue to refine her argument, reinforcing her points with irrefutable logic and precise evidence. By the 9th interjection, the dynamic had shifted unmistakably. The aggressor was losing ground, and the audience was fully aligned with the clarity and authority Crockett projected. Then came the moment that would define the exchange. Her 10th sentence, delivered with calm, unwavering confidence, encapsulated the essence of her argument in a single, decisive statement. It was neither an emotional outburst nor a rhetorical flourish. It was a masterclass in timing and precision. In just a few words, she dismantled the foundation of the interruptions and left no room for further deflection. Every viewer could sense the shift immediately. The momentum had swung irreversibly in her favor. The reaction in the studio was palpable. Waters' attempts to regain control faltered as Crockett's composure and methodical articulation made further interruption futile. The audience, both live and online, recognized the magnitude of the moment. Her approach had not relied on volume or theatrics, but on the deliberate use of strategic pauses, carefully chosen phrasing, and unwavering focus. Analysts would later highlight this sentence as the culmination of a carefully orchestrated communication strategy that showcased leadership under pressure. Social media erupted almost instantly. Clips of the 10th sentence circulated widely, becoming viral moments that sparked discussion across platforms. Viewers dissected every nuance, the timing, the phrasing, the subtle gestures that signaled confidence and authority. Political commentators praised her ability to command the narrative without resorting to aggression or confrontation. The exchange became a case study in public communication, demonstrating that influence is earned through preparation, clarity, and strategic composure rather than domination or interruption. Beyond the viral moment, the broader implications of the segment were evident. Crockett had transformed a potentially chaotic confrontation into a demonstration of effective leadership. Her composure under repeated pressure illustrated a lesson applicable far beyond politics. When faced with constant disruption, measured strategy and clear reasoning prevail over impulsive reactions. The segment's impact was immediate, inspiring discussion about media etiquette, rhetorical strategy, and the power of maintaining credibility under scrutiny. Crockett's mastery of the moment also resonated with educators and civic organizations. Many cited her performance as an example for teaching communication skills, public speaking, and debate strategy. Students and professionals alike analyzed the segment to understand how preparation and poise could neutralize attempts to dominate or control a conversation. The lesson was clear. Influence is not achieved by shouting over someone else, but by commanding attention through integrity, logic, and calm authority, by transforming the pressure of interruptions into an opportunity to assert control. Crockett redefined the rules of engagement in live political discourse. The 10th sentence, brief yet powerful, became the focal point for discussions about leadership, strategy, and the role of rhetoric in shaping public perception. Every interruption she overcame underscored a broader principle: patience, preparation, and strategic clarity are often the most potent tools in high-stakes communication, even in post-segment analyses. The significance of Crockett's approach was unmistakable. Experts highlighted that the combination of strategic phrasing, deliberate pacing, and calm composure was what allowed her to neutralize repeated interruptions and assert authority. The segment had evolved from a potentially divisive confrontation into a widely recognized demonstration of skillful, principled leadership. It was a moment that viewers, analysts, and aspiring leaders would reference for years to come. The tension that had built throughout the segment now reached its apex. Every interruption, every sharp question, every attempt to throw Crockett off balance had only set the stage for her final assertion. Her composure remained unshaken, her focus razor-sharp, as if each challenge had been anticipated and accounted for in her mind. By this point, it was no longer just a televised exchange, had become a demonstration of leadership, strategy, and the power of disciplined communication under pressure. The 10th sentence, delivered with precision, resonated far beyond the studio walls. It was a culmination of moments carefully layered together: the calm acknowledgement of interruptions, the methodical deployment of facts, and the deliberate timing that left no room for evasion. Waters' attempts to regain narrative control fell flat as Crockett's authority crystallized. Her words, measured yet unyielding, made it clear that attempts to interrupt or manipulate the conversation would be ineffective. The ripple effects were immediate. Online audiences flooded social media with clips and commentary, dissecting every nuance of the exchange. Analysts noted the meticulous construction of her sentences, the strategic placement of pauses, and the subtle cues that reinforced her authority. Comments ranged from admiration of her composure to praise for her skill in turning potential chaos into a commanding display of communication prowess. Viewers recognized that Crockett had not just responded to interruptions, She had elevated the entire discussion into a masterclass on influence, credibility, and leadership under pressure. Her final words did more than shut down the repeated interruptions. They reframed the conversation entirely. The narrative shifted from a hostile back and forth into a study of effective rhetoric and strategic control. Crockett demonstrated that in high-stakes environments, maintaining clarity, credibility, and focus is far more powerful than attempting to dominate through aggression or noise. Every viewer could see the principle in action. Influence comes from preparation, composure, and strategic articulation rather than volume or interruption. As commentators broke down the clip on news channels and online platforms, they emphasized the broader implications. Crockett's approach provided lessons applicable beyond politics. In workplaces, classrooms, and public forums, patience combined with preparation and clarity can decisively shape outcomes. The segment became a teaching moment for aspiring leaders, communicators, and anyone who must navigate high-pressure situations with poise. Her performance underscored the timeless lesson that measured. Principled responses often carry more weight than reactive outbursts. Even within the studio, the dynamic had shifted. Waters, who had opened the segment attempting to assert dominance through interruption, found himself unable to redirect the conversation. The contrast between his rapid-fire aggression and Crockett's deliberate, authoritative responses was stark. Analysts highlighted that this visual and rhetorical contrast amplified the impact of her final sentence, making it a memorable and widely shared moment. The audience could see the embodiment of strategy in real time, lesson in how control, credibility, and calm decisiveness can prevail against persistent disruption. The long-term impact extended to social media, political commentary, and public discourse. Clips of the 10th sentence circulated widely, creating viral moments that sparked discussions about communication strategy, media accountability, and leadership under pressure. Educators and mentors cited the segment as an example of how to manage repeated challenges without sacrificing credibility or composure. The exchange became a reference point for anyone looking to understand the interplay between preparation, strategy, and real-time influence. Crockett's ability to maintain authority in the face of repeated interruptions highlighted a crucial truth. Disruption does not equal influence. True power lies in clarity, credibility, and consistent strategic communication. By turning each interruption into an opportunity to reinforce her argument, she demonstrated that patience, preparation, and deliberate articulation are far more effective tools than aggression or dominance. Every micro-expression, every carefully placed pause, every piece of evidence contributed to a narrative that was both compelling and instructive. In the aftermath, political analysts, educators, and viewers alike agreed that this was not just a media momentith, was a lesson in leadership. Crockett's performance revealed how strategic communication can overcome persistent challenges, maintain authority, and shape public perception. It became clear that what had been intended as a confrontation evolved into a defining example of disciplined, credible, and principled communication under pressure.